one stone. One boy, one impossible fight. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this moment is still talked about 3,000 years later. A giant, 9 feet of bronze and muscle, a spear like a weaver's beam, a voice that made grown soldiers tremble, and on the other side of the valley, a boy, no armor, no sword, just a sling, 5 stones, and something no one else on that battlefield had. And this is the story of the day. Faith walked onto a field of war and won.
For 40 straight days, an entire army stood frozen by fear, and it took one voice to expose why. Israel and the Philistines stood on 2 hills, facing each other across the valley of Elah. Neither side wanted to make the first move because the first move meant marching downhill into a slaughter. For 40 days, the armies simply stared at one another, and every one of those 40 days, a challenger stepped out from the Philistine ranks. Not a soldier, a monster of a man named Goliath from the city. He was so tall that men measured him not in feet, but in cubits, over 9 of them. His armor alone weighed more than most men. And every day he shouted the same challenge across the valley. Send me one man. If he beats me, we serve you. If I beat him, you serve us. Every day, Israel's army stood in silence. Every day, fear won. While an army trembled, one person wasn't afraid, and he didn't even know about the battle yet. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, not a soldier, not even old enough to be counted among the men who could enlist. His 3 oldest brothers were at the battle lines, but David's job was simpler. Watch the flock, bring supplies when needed. One day, his father Jesse sent him to the camp with bread, cheese, and a message for his brothers. David had no idea what he was walking into. What David saw the moment he arrived would have sent most people running the other way instead. It made him furious. David reached the camp just as the army was lining up for battle, and just as Goliath stepped out for his daily taunt. David watched grown men, seasoned soldiers, turn and run at the sound of that voice. Not into battle, away from it. He couldn't understand it. He asked the men around him, "Who is this man that he defies the armies of the living God? Who is he to make Israel?" His brother Eliab overheard and snapped at him, told him to go back to his sheep, accused him of just wanting to watch a battle. But David didn't back down. He kept asking the same question, because to him the answer was obvious. Nobody should be afraid of a man who defies God. Word of the boy's questions reached King Saul, and David was brought before him. The king looked at David and saw exactly what everyone else saw. A boy, not a warrior. "You cannot go against this Philistine," Saul told him. "You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." But David had an answer ready. He told Saul about the times he'd guarded his father's sheep, how a lion came, how a bear came, and how he'd fought them off with his bare hands to protect the flock. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear," David said, "will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul didn't have another champion. No one else had volunteered in 40 days. So he agreed reluctantly and offered David his own armor and sword. David tried it on. Heavy. Not his. He took it off. "I cannot go in these," he said. "I am not used to them." He picked up his staff, his sling, and 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. That was all he took to the fight. The giant looked at his opponent and started laughing, a mistake he wouldn't live long enough to regret. Goliath saw David approaching and was insulted. A boy, no armor, not even a proper weapon, just a shepherd's stick. "Am I a dog," Goliath roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods and promised to feed his flesh to the birds and wild animals. David didn't flinch. "You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin." David answered, "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and all the earth will know that there is a God in Israel." Goliath moved toward him, and David ran, not away, but straight toward the giant. He reached into his bag, took out a single stone, and slung it. The next 5 seconds changed the course of a war. The stone struck Goliath directly in the forehead. He fell down to the ground. David ran to him, took Goliath's own sword, and used it to finish what he had started. When the Philistine army saw their champion was dead, panic swept through their ranks. They fled, and the army of Israel, who had cowered for 40 days, surged forward and chased them down. The battle that no one thought Israel could win was over in minutes, decided by a boy with a sling. Here's the part of this story most people miss. The real reason David won had nothing to do with the stone. He didn't win that day because he was stronger than Goliath. He wasn't. He won because he saw something the entire army had missed, that the size of the enemy doesn't matter when your trust is in something bigger than the enemy. Every one of us faces a Goliath at some point. A fear, a diagnosis, a debt, a decision that feels too big. And often the loudest voice in the room is the one telling us to stay on the hill and stay afraid. But the story of David reminds us, you don't need someone else's armor. You don't need to fight the battle the way everyone else expects you to. You just need to show up with what you have and the faith to believe it's enough. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing. Every week, we bring another saga from scripture to, and I'd love to know, what's the Goliath in your life right now? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, walk boldly. Sacred Sagas logo, subscribe prompt, suggested next video.